There's a new national flower on the horizon and it's called the Double Chaconia. In April, Cabinet approved the mutant flower of the single Chaconia through the National Emblems Committee. But after 56 years, Professor Emeritus Julian Duncan believes there is some information about this country's national flower that must be clarified.
I think we ought to start with the history of the plant itself. It was discovered by Josef Varsovitz in the New World. He was working in Guatemala and he found that he discovered lots of plants there. Among them was Varsovitzia coccinea, which is the botanical name of this plant. It exists in a very narrow belt from Costa Rica to equatorial Peru and Brazil, and this includes Trinidad. It is definitely a New World plant. It does not exist in the Old World. Because it exists in Trinidad, we have records of it in our flora. And in the publication of the flora in 1928, it is mentioned. And there are 3 local names mentioned in that. Pride of Trinidad, Wild Poinsettia, and Chaconia.
But the discovery of this flower in Trinidad and Tobago is quite an interesting story.
In 1957, Mrs. Grace Malone, traveling along the Rima Blanchishes Road in the company of Mr. David Oyoung, saw an extremely spectacular inflorescence at the head of a group of Chaconiers. They realized that this was different and they parked the car to see what was going on. Mr. Oyoung, at risk to life and limb, clambered down and took some cuttings. He tried propagating them, but without success. He then enlisted the help of Mr. Nichols, Roy Nichols, at ICTA, the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture, and they were successful in propagating 3. 1 was sent to Kew, 2 were planted on the campus. At Kew, somebody there was able to propagate more. And it was realized then that this plant is a mutant of the wild type. Now, commonly we call the wild type the single, and we call the mutant the double. This is unfortunate, because in strict botanical terms, a double flower is one in which the reproductive organs, that's the stamens and the pistil, are transformed into petaloid structures, so the flower has many petals.
Professor Duncan says, despite many legends, the Chaconia name did not derive from the last Spanish governor to Trinidad and Tobago.
The first legend states that Chaconia was given in honor of the last Spanish governor of Trinidad and Tobago, Don Jose Chacon. The second legend, which is actually recorded, is that the French, who gave local names to many of our plants, named it Chaconier because it reminded them of the Chacon dances. The Chacon was a dance popular among peasants in Spain and France in the 18th century. In Spain, these little flags, red flags they put on their sleeves and skirts, were called chaconadas. And the French named this plant Chaconia because it reminded them of the Chacon dancers.
For the past 60 years, experts have been lobbying to change the national flower of Trinidad and Tobago from the single Chaconia to the double. But what exactly is the distinction between the 2 flowers?
The double variety of this plant does not seed because it's sterile. That's quite incorrect. It produces seed, the seeds germinate, you get little seedlings, but there's a difficulty with seedling establishment. It is not impossible. We have established seedlings that have grown and flowered. What has happened, we found that the seeds, when shed, are immature, morphologically, that is, they're not ready for germination. And it takes about 9 to 12 days for them to mature and germinate, but they can all germinate. The single is what is called a panicle. That is a compound inflorescence. It's made up of a series of smaller inflorescences, each of which is called a cyme. An individual cyme has 15 to 20 flowers. Each of these flowers has 5 calyx lobes. That's the outermost part, the green part of the flower. In a cyme of 15 to 20, one calyx lobe of one flower becomes enlarged and red.
Director of the Horticultural Services Division, Gloria Braffett, explains how the change of the national flower to the Double Chaconia was done.
So in March of this year, the ministry would have prepared a cabinet note asking cabinet to, one, change our national flower from the single Chaconia to the Double Chaconia, and 2, inform the National Emblems Committee of that change. And in May of this year, that was granted. Cabinet approved the change, so we now have the Double Chaconia as our national flower.
Her division has partnered with schools to ensure the double is grown in every institution.
We need to ensure the new flower, the national flower, is there prominent in the national schools, in our schools and government institutions. So we are going to partner with organizations like the 4-H to ensure each school eventually gets a plant of the Double Chaconia. And likewise, we have a responsibility to place the national flower in, as I said before, the compound of government ministries and entities.
She shared what role the division is playing in keeping the flora of the country preserved.
The Horticultural Services Division has a responsibility to conserve our plant germplasm, and more so the Double Chaconia, which is unique to Trinidad. We have a responsibility to ensure that germplasm is always available.
Advisor to the Prime Minister, agronomist Dr. John Allen, has some ideas as to how this flower can be commercialized.
Because this is distinctly Trinidadian. It's found here, made here, and we have actually lost it. So, I mean, everyone would like to have a national Double Chaconia or mutant Chaconia in his landscape, but it is not available. So this is an opportunity for commercial nurserymen to explore and exploit the potential. It is here, we have the cuttings, we have the original cuttings, which you're saying this is part of the original stock, which would be a marketing centerpiece. So I think if we can look at that, this is an opportunity for the horticultural industry to grow.
And some believe the national flower only blooms closest to this country's Independence Day celebration. The Double Chaconia blooms all year round and can be viewed at the Botanic Gardens in Port of Spain. Marie Hall, TTT News.